It's your $2 Tuesday movie credit here today, and I will be reviewing the movie America, Imagine the World Without Her. Now this movie is actually a documentary, and it was written and directed by the same people that did Obama's America 2016, Dinesh D'Souza and John Sullivan. Initially, I wasn't going to see this movie, mainly because when I watch documentaries, I like to watch them at home, where I can pause or rewind or things like that, and I don't want to miss anything. But I said, I was watching another movie, and this actually came out in the previews, and in the previews, it showed how, the Revolutionary War began, and what if America had not won that Revolutionary War? What would the world be like today? And I was intrigued. And I was like, well, why don't I go see it, It's no big deal. And I may learn something. So I went with the notion that I would see a documentary based on what America, or rather, what would the world look like without America. But what I got was something totally different. I have to say, the preview was misleading. Now, full disclosure, I did watch the other documentary, 2016 Obama's America. I watched that, so I came to this documentary not with preconceived notions, but I actually came thinking that it may be something different, or taking the whole concept of America as a whole, nixed from the world to a different level, and this would be a different type of documentary. Unfortunately, that was not the case. If you saw 2016 Obama's America, then pretty much that's about the same thing as America, Imagine the World Without Her. About the only difference is, instead of just focusing on Barack Obama, the directors and writers of this movie decide to focus their attention on other minorities. Minorities that feel that they were somehow wronged by the American government, and in some cases still being wronged. Now, I'm not going to go into all the different groups that they mention in the movie. I will name them, but I won't go into specifics. And I probably won't get them all, but I'll try to name the ones that I remember. They talked about Native Americans and genocide of more than half of their generation. They talked about South Americans and how Mexico was taken from them. They talked about the world and how they felt that the United States was somehow a bully, that where they said that they were helping and supporting other countries, they were actually conquering and bullying other countries. And they talked about African Americans as well, and how they were brought over as slaves, and how they felt that this country, from that very beginning of bringing African Americans over as slaves till this very day, are still holding that group back in different ways based on racism. Now, the documentary itself, like I said, the title is misleading because the basic gist of it is that instead of talking about, how the world would benefit or would not benefit from America not being a part of it, all it does is looks at those groups that have said that America did something negative to them, or America isn't the greatest country that it claims to be. All the documentary does is point a finger back at those same groups and says, how dare you? say these things about America because they're unfounded. And that's not true. The way the documentary goes about it is it looks at things from a one-sided view. Now, D'Souza did mention that black people also own slaves. And these are some things that I like, because he did talk about those things, because those things are glossed over too. Yes, black people owned slaves at that time. Slavery was going on all over the world at that time, and still even today. And he mentioned that. He also mentioned indentured servants, which are not always mentioned, because these were slaves too. I appreciated that he mentioned those things in his documentary, because those are some things also they get glossed over. So, and in doing that, what he was saying was that it was done all over the world. It was done more to the blacks. So, because of that, they should not feel any sense of retribution for that, or feel that America wronged them, because the entire world was doing this. Africa itself was doing this. And that's the wrong thing. I'm sorry. You don't justify your wrongdoing by saying everybody's doing it. That's just the wrong answer. I'm sorry. That doesn't work. I believe that this documentary was misleading because it never really delved into what would the world be like without America. What this documentary does is it kind of takes away from the things that the American people did. America is not founded on white picket fences and colonists that were always good and never treated anyone wrong. There was segregation. There was separation. There was genocide. There was homicide. There was thievery. There was so many hate-filled things that were done by Americans to others. But that is not all America is, and that is definitely not what America stands for today. Just as there were bad things that America did, there were also great things. There were things that they did for retribution. One of the things that he didn't mention, or the groups that he didn't mention, and I wonder why, were gay Americans and women. These were both groups that were also mistreated and continue to be mistreated by Americans. Neither group still has the same equal rights afforded to their counterparts. So, yeah. So America still has a long way to go. So for D'Souza to just say America is one of the greatest nations in the world, and America is perfect, and those people that say that it is not, well then there's something wrong with them, or there's something wrong with their thought process. It's wrong. America is not perfect. America has done wrong things. America has done great things, yes, but they have also done wrong things. And for us to cover those things up, or for D'Souza to try to make those things look like, instead of genocide, it was conquering. Instead of taking the slaves from their homeland, it was bringing them into a nation that allowed them to become better people. Well, yeah, that's glossing over a lot of stuff that happened in between. So, yeah, the documentary was very one-sided. I would suggest you wait until it comes out on cable, so you don't have to spend like $8 to see it, because it's not. If you saw 2016 Barack Obama's America, then yeah, this is about a bit of the same, only it goes after minorities this time instead of just President Obama. And I find that very disheartening, especially as D'Souza himself is a minority. And for him to say that these things that happened were actually, he's saying that they should be celebrated and not, and America shouldn't be shouldn't be made to feel ashamed for these things. That in itself is very disturbing to me, that he feels that way. Of course, he also goes into the fact that the ones that are being persecuted are Republicans and Tea Party members, because they are telling the truth about President Obama's America, or the America that President Obama would like to see. So, yeah, I find that very hypocritical, and he even mentions, again, glosses over the fact that he himself was arrested for his illegal acts. He said he made mistakes. He didn't see what those mistakes were. He didn't even own up to the fact that they were not necessarily mistakes as much as they were bad choices, illegal choices that he made. And he paid the price for them. I felt bad for those people that were at the beginning of his documentary that were giving their views on why they felt that America had done bad things. Because those people that probably watched the documentary later that thought that he was actually listening to their viewpoints because he found them valid, or at least found them worth hearing, he was later saw that what he was really doing was invalidating their points and pointing the finger at them and letting them know they should be ashamed of themselves for their thoughts of America. I mean, anybody that's watched the Michael Moore documentaries, which some people also consider a one-sided liberal view, will find this entertaining. So, the old school movies, I only have one old school movie for this. I did already, like I said, talk a little bit about 2016, Barack Obama's America. And this was the documentary he did preceding this documentary, America Imagine the World Without Her. This one was basically talking, the 2016 Obama's America was done in 2012. And it basically talks about how he felt like Obama's America was a third world anti-American view, because he believes that this will all happen by the year 2016, that America will be so financially destitute, that America will be so weak and so unable to protect itself that it will no longer be the great power it is today. I believe that the intention of this movie was to get people not to vote for President Obama in a second term, to be very afraid of doing such, because in doing this, it would be America's downfall, basically. Some of the things that D'Souza claims are reasons that President Obama wanted to see America fall was his association with what D'Souza called his founding fathers. And I'm just going to name them. There was Frank Marshall Davis, who is a card-carrying communist. Bill Ayers, that I spoke of earlier, who is a terrorist group member. And he did bombings, he did a lot of protests and things. Most of these things he did, especially the bombings, he did before he even met President Obama. And Edward Said, who is a Columbia University professor. Roberto Unger, who is a Harvard law professor. And Jeremiah Wright, who is a former pastor of the Obama family. Now, these people have all come out and stating that in one way or the other how they feel America is not, America should not be the power that it is. And they feel, and D'Souza's belief is that President Obama is under that same thought process with them. So he's doing everything he can now to bring down America under the cloak of his, health care bill, and is fighting for middle America and his slogans. I actually found this document to be quite ridiculous because, again, he told of the associations that President Obama, who wasn't even President Obama again, he wasn't even Senator Obama then, he was just Barack Obama. He associated with these different men, different times in his life. And also he talks about his relationship with his father was pretty much non-existent. But President Obama talks about his association with his father in his book, and how he was an absentee dad, and that his views of his father were very glossy because his father wasn't there, and his mother gave him this image of his father that was greater than great, and that's the view he had until others came into his life and showed him that this was not a correct view. Now, again, some of the things that D'Souza said were facts. He was able to prove those facts. But to say that President Obama was associated with these men, but not to say in what context, not to say how long, not to say, and also to speculate as to their influence in his life simply because of that association is ridiculous. At least the America Imagine the World Without Her was a bit entertaining, even though, I still found it to be unfounded in most of the things that he said. Anybody with any sense of history could look at, especially America Imagine the World Without Her, and counter different points that he made in his documentary. And easily. I mean, I am not a history buff, and I can look at some of the things that he stated and counter them, as I have already stated here in this review. So, yeah. Now, I did choose an old school movie to correlate with this one. Now, the old school movie that I chose was a movie that was done that came out back in 1995, White Man's Burden. It stars Harry Belafonte and John Travolta. It was written and directed by Desmond McCann. And I hope I didn't say that wrong. Okay, so this movie shows an alternative America run by affluent blacks and whites as the minority. Okay, so it's basically the haves and have-nots, only it's been reversed. Now, black people are the haves and white people are the have-nots. Okay. Louis Pinnock, who is played by Travolta, is a factory worker, husband and father of two, living in the inner city ghetto. And Thaddeus Thomas, who is played by Harry Belafonte, is a business CEO, very affluent, has influential friends, has lots of money. Now, there were so many inconsistencies with this movie. For one, it didn't talk about the black people as a whole, or the different viewpoints, even though they were now considered the haves. It kind of hinted at that at the beginning of the movie, where a woman that was also African American asked Belafonte's character about how he felt about white people and the lot in life they had been dealt in this alternative universe. And he pretty much had no regard for them. He felt that they got what they deserved because they were not good enough to do any better for themselves. Kind of like the statements that I guess are sometimes said about black people today. So, Travolta in this movie, like I said, is part of the have-not group. Again, they talk about Travolta, and maybe there's one other guy, like his friend, who's a homeless guy, that he kind of like tries to get involved in his wrongdoing. But there's no other people that are ever really mentioned. Okay, yeah, Travolta's family. And the woman talks about how she can get a job as a maid. They don't talk about if they have education. They don't talk about, their other family members, even though the wife's mom comes into the view for a few minutes, basically, so that the wife can move in with the mother when things get worse for the family, as if they could get any more worse. So, it's a movie that I understand what it was trying to do, and I think that if they had broadened the viewpoints better, that they could have actually done it. But because it was one man against another man, it wasn't one group against another group, even though they kind of like showed other, people. They showed people from the black community and they showed people from the white community. Their viewpoints were never given. All that they saw was, hey, in the backdrop, something is happening to this character. How do we feel about it? That's it. Pretty much. Now, again, I understand what this movie was trying to do. I just feel like they should have done it from maybe a broader standpoint. And they kind of like got into the thing that D'Souza got into with his documentary, where it was a one-sided viewpoint, where in this movie there were the haves and the have-nots, and the haves were influent. They were great. They had very little regard for the have-nots and their plights. And the have-nots, they had nothing except each other. And they believed that the haves were taking everything from them. And they believed the only way they could get anything was to take it back. And there was no middle ground. No one showed any middle ground. There was a scene where Thomas's wife had a fashion show, and she brought in a bunch of white children that their organization was supporting financially, and she wanted to bring them in to show, oh, these are the kids that we're helping. Now, I found that to be a little weird, and not just because they were white children, but because I understood totally where she was coming from that. I'm sorry, where the writer and director were coming from showing that. But again, it did give two viewpoints, but in my opinion, those two viewpoints were the viewpoint of one person, saying that the haves will always, as long as the haves basically have everything, they're never going to show regard for the have-nots. And because the have-nots have nothing, they're going to do whatever they can by any means necessary to take back from the have-nots. I thought they could have done a better job of this. And for that, the acting, great. The realism of it wasn't necessarily about the acting as much as it was about the environment and the atmosphere and the setting for this whole movie. It just didn't feel real at all. The actors themselves, Belafonte and Travolta, did, I think, as best a job as they could. You believe that one was affluent, and you believe that the other had nothing, and you believe that. I think that Travolta may have overdone it a bit in his acting. I mean, just because you're from the ghetto doesn't mean like every other word out of your mouth is a curse word or that you have bad grammar. You know, I think that was a bit overdone, and if I may say so, a bit stereotypical. They don't necessarily, I checked on cable and all the, different groups, Showtime, HBO, Cinemax. I could not find this movie. I actually had to go onto YouTube. So you can go onto YouTube if you just want to look at it and see it for yourself, because that's what I ended up doing to watch the movie. And as far as the documentaries, the movie of America, Imagine a World Without Her is still in theaters, so you can go see it, and you could probably purchase the Obama's America 2016. You could probably purchase that, but I also watched that on YouTube. So if you just want to see it for free, the 2016 Obama's America, go onto YouTube and watch it for free. That's my review for today. I hope you liked it. If you have any other movies, or in this case documentaries, that you think better correlated with America, Imagine the World Without Her, let me know. Okay, thank you. And I'll see you next time.